Welcome to the Verizon Center in the U.S. nation's capital. And is there an election or something happening soon here? Yeah, there is. And there will be no voting on what happens tonight. It'll be decided by both teams, the Toronto Raptors, the home opener for the Washington Wizards. Sherman, there's a lot of talk always when these two teams meet about the backcourts. Lowry and DeRozan, Wall and Beal. Who's better? There's always a chatter. It comes between the combatants as well. But as you have mentioned, it's not like Washington doesn't have other guys who are pretty good players.
Right, and you can understand why the chatter is about the backcourt, but you look at Washington's roster, and they have some guys that can really do some damage. I mean, Marcin Gortat does a great job in screen and roll, screen and pop situations. He can score on the block. He can pass the basketball. You know, you look at Otto Porter Jr., a guy who off of movement does a very good job of disrupting your defense, and he's a guy that you have to pay attention to, kind of like DeMarre Carroll does for the Raptors. You know, this is a team that has guys that can hurt you from the three-point line, in the paint, obviously, the pressure that the backcourt puts on you. But if you're the Raptors, you have to understand in the first 3 games of the season, from a defensive perspective, lack that third quarter in the last game against the Nuggets. They've been pretty good in terms of their consistency. So they've got to continue to build on that side of the floor. I think their offense is going to come, but defensively, they have to be very aware of the breakdown ability of the Washington Wizards.
Well, John Wall is a guy that does a lot of that. Dating back to last year, 15 consecutive games with 10 or more assists. And Sherman, we always say if he starts to make that mid-range jumper, he's a problem, because now you have to go out and guard him. How do the Raptors, well, what's their best guess, their best way to handle? And it's not so much Beal, because everything comes from John Wall.
Well, it is. And you know, John Wall puts so much pressure into open court. So, number one, you can't turn the basketball over and allow him to run free in the open court. The other thing is, to your point, you've got to play the odds. I mean, you know that he finishes in the paint very well, but as a jump shooter, as a three-point shooter, that's where your advantage is. So you want to contain and contest him as much as you can, gap him on the perimeter. But the other side of that is now Bradley Beal is putting the ball on the floor, and he's attacking off the dribble. He's not just a shooter. So you've got to be very aware. And with his shooting ability, you can't gap him like you can a John Wall. So whoever's defending him has to be very aware of disrupting his shot, and the help side comes into play now. That help side has to be very responsive. It's got to be there early, on time, and make sure that they deter that paint penetration, because Dwayne Casey's talked about it. Their philosophy is protect the paint. These two guys can hurt you in the paint.
All right, so let's hear from the Toronto Raptors after practice this morning.
Things go through their backcourt for sure, but you got some guys that are really good. Nicholson's good off the bench, but Gortat's a big key to this game. You know, the way he runs the floor, how good he is of a screener, and his game is just he's really good. But at the end of the day, you know, John and Bradley will be the go-to guys to key in on. But they have a really good roster.
But again, I read words. Some of them said this is a must-win for them, and again, it's a must-win for us. So, you know, I think our guys got to come in, and the most important thing is coming in the first quarter. This team historically has come out in the first quarter with guns a-blazing. They come out like a track meet, so we've got to come out with our disposition ready to go in the first quarter.
Well, we know that they're a fast-paced team. You know, they look to break out and transition a lot. We're gonna have to be back. You know, be in a defensive stance. You know, obviously their main guys, Bill and Wall. Obviously, Wall creates a lot for them. You know, Bill's a talented, young scorer. You know, can shoot the ball and whatnot. So we know we're gonna have to. We're gonna have our hands full with those two.
So the Toronto Raptors take on the Washington Wizards. Home game #1 for Washington, road game #1 for Toronto. 7 o'clock on TSN, and you can hear it on Sportsnet 590, The Fan.